Good evening, and welcome to another edition of The Boogeyman. Today I want to talk about the Scarlet Gospels, which was in nerdy heaven. So the Scarlet Gospels is a book by Clive Barker. It's basically a continuation of the mythology he began with a novel called The Hellbound Heart. What's interesting about the Scarlet Gospels is that it's the first time since Hellraiser 2 that Clive Barker has directly addressed the Cenobites from the Hellraiser world, and any horror fan will know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then see the Hellraiser series, but be wary that the sequels get really crappy near the end. I'm looking at you, Hellraiser Revelations. You sucked!
Oh, Blood Puke. Good song title. Someone write that? Oh, that's right. We already wrote that. Good song, though.
Oh.
Should go back into set list.
I think I need another liver transplant.
Anyways, so the Scarlet Gospels was kind of Barker's return to the mythology to try to make up for some of the lackluster sequels that were not made in his name, which he made very vocal comments about on his Twitter and social media outlets. But onto the Scarlet Gospels. It begins with a bit of necromancy, and we see the iconic figure Pinhead, who most people will know just simply by sight. We get a sense of how powerful he is. There's a little bit of a jab about him and the name Pinhead, which was never intended to be his official name. It was just a name that on set people kind of didn't know what to credit Doug Bradley as, so they just described him as, well, he has pins in his head, so we'll call him Pinhead. Which gets to a little bit of a gripe I have with the book, which is that in a lot of interviews before the book came out, Clive Barker talked about kind of having a better place and a better name for the character than Pinhead, which was not addressed in the book, which is kind of a disappointment.
Hey, Fatso! We got your favorite thing! Disappointment!
He gets called a lot of things in the book. He gets called Hell Priest, he gets called Pinhead, which usually aggravates him. He gets called Pinfuck. Yes, he does. By one of the characters, which is kind of cheesy. But still, throughout the book, he has a lot more dignity and a lot more regality about his character, which is kind of what makes the character, personally to me, so scary, is this idea of this very powerful being, very destructive, very violent, who carries himself with composure. He just really is just, he's calm and collected, and he never really loses his temper. There's a few times in this book where he kind of almost loses his temper and then kind of regains it, which I thought was an interesting touch. But onto the book itself. The book, like I said, starts with this Pinhead character being summoned in a very creepy fashion. I won't spoil too much. Buy the book if you want the details. And then it goes on from there to reveal that this Hell Priest, as he's called, is he has a plan that he kind of undergoes. And again, I won't spoil too much. It's not really that elaborate of a plan. You could probably predict it fairly early on what he's doing, even though it kind of is played as being mysterious. And then we kind of follow him through hell as he undergoes this plan. The main character of the book is actually very much so Pinhead, the Pinhead Cenobite. And the Scarlet Gospels refers to kind of the witness of his journey throughout the book, which I actually really thoroughly enjoyed. However, I won't pull a full fanboy and say that this film isn't without flaws. Again, I followed the development of the book for quite some time, and I feel like a lot of the things that Clive Barker talked about got left on the editing room floor. This book, as you can see, isn't terribly thick. It's about half of what the original manuscript was in terms of length, and I feel like I got a little bit let down, and it's hard to say because I never really read, obviously, the things that got left on the cutting room floor, so maybe the decision to put them on the cutting room floor was a valid one. to be honest, I just feel like the book could have been thicker. It could have been. I wanted to be with these characters a little longer, and even though the imagery throughout the book is definitely vivid and interesting and very familiar to, should be very familiar to people who enjoy Barker's works, I still felt like he was holding back, which is kind of interesting in its own right. When it comes to a book that's been highly anticipated, a return to form for Barker, a return to a subject matter that he kind of never directly touched. He hinted at the world of the Cenobites in other books, and in the Tortured Souls toy series, he kind of hinted at that world, but he's never officially returned to it until this book. And I feel like waiting this long for, I'm going to just put how many years it's been here because I don't know offhand, but it's been X amount of years since The Hellbound Heart was written, and I feel like, I don't want to say I was let down. It's actually a highly recommended book for any of Clive Barker's fans, or any fan of the Hellraiser series in general, or any combination thereof. So I don't want to say it's not recommended, but I feel like he still has more to say about this world. And maybe he will return to this world, because, I mean, obviously, hell is a common subject. Hell and other realms is a common subject for Barker. So I don't feel like this is the end of that subject per se, in as much as it might be an end of a character, a single character, and his story arc. So in that regards, I still have a lot more to say about the book. I feel like his imagery in hell, which again I won't spoil too much, but there's certain things where at certain moments when the characters are journeying through hell, that I felt were a little too fantastical in the regards that they felt safe in a lot of places, which I thought was an interesting and weird move, that these characters that are making their way through hell have these pockets where hell creatures are almost helping them out, which is kind of strange, and I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. However, I will say, and I won't spoil too much again, I will say that the imagery of Lucifer, when we finally get to him as a character, was beautiful. I absolutely adored the Lucifer character. Again, I won't spoil too many details, because when you see the character, it's kind of a little bit of a surprise. If I had to pick an image throughout the book that stuck with me, it's definitely the image of Lucifer. Another image that stuck with me is this image of the Hell Priest at the beginning. This is not much of a spoiler because it's within the first 20 pages or so of the book, but you get this character that's resurrected from the dead, and after being killed by the pinhead character, and he hears the bell toll, the familiar bell of the Cenobites showing up. And he basically tells the people that resurrected him that they made a mistake in resurrecting him, because he doesn't want to go through this again, and to give the demon whatever the hell he wants, no matter what. Just always give him whatever he wants. I'm not really doing it justice. The introduction that Clive Barker gives to this character, if you've never encountered this character before anywhere else, is really vivid, and you really get a sense of the adrenaline involved in seeing this character, and this character coming to being and showing up in our world. I could probably ramble on. I've been a huge fan of Clive Barker for many, many years now. I find he's one of the best writers of horror fiction, one of the most vivid, one of the most thematic, and one of the most relevant, I would say. And in terms of this book, I'm going to say that I actually was slightly disappointed in it, simply because I felt like it was such a snapshot when I was expecting a little bit more elaborate of a story. That being said, I cannot fault what is actually in the story, except for the minor flaws that I mentioned. So overall, I would say this is a must-read for any Hellraiser fan, for any horror movie fan. And if you're a horror movie fan and don't read, there's no excuse. Don't be proud of your illiteracy. Read the damn book. Read it. Read it. It's highly recommended. So without further ado, that's my thoughts on the Scarlet Gospel. I'll have thoughts on other horror material in the future. I don't want to do reviews per se, just kind of my thoughts and opinions on the material. I might say whether or not I recommend it. I usually like to talk a little bit more about the philosophy behind things and things like that. So it'll be more about the material than reviews. But I will say whether or not I recommend things. So if you want to look forward to things like that, stay tuned in the future. So this is Boogeyman signing out. Stay unafraid. Don't be afraid of anything, not even me, especially not critical thinking and wonderful horror movies. Because they have such sights to show you. Yeah, get it? It's a reference to stuff. Boom!